Hello every pony, this is Dash Assault again for part 3 of my pony vectoring tutorials series. Today I'm going to attempt to get the main and most of Pinkie's head done here. So we'll see how far we can get. As you can see from my previous session, I've finished out this other eye here, although we're going to have this issue here where the head's going to need to overlap and kind of be over the eye instead of the eye bulging out in the middle of nowhere here. But that's okay. Again, we'll fix that one later. So for now, we're actually just going to start working on the mane. So again, we use the Bezier curve tool. We start out, I'm using the B key for my shortcut. You'll notice my snapping here is being unhelpful, so I'll hit Shift % to turn it off. You can also click up in the corner to turn it on and off. And then I'll just start clicking where I think the line should be, kind of at the points of where the line should go. Every inflection point here should really get a node so that we can bend it around to the right location. And it doesn't matter if you have too many nodes, you can always fix that later. I'm going to consider that to be a first line as part of this mane. Then I'm going to have another one that starts here and goes all the way around. And then goes all the way over here. This is probably going to be a little bit flat back here. And then goes down to there. So that'll be the second one. Then we're going to need a line that goes from here, a line that goes from here, and a line that goes from here. Also, we're going to need this loop thing going on here. I think the easiest way to do this is actually to draw 4 lines, and then we'll fix that up later. So now we'll just bend all these lines to where we want them to go. Again, there's no particular science to this. It's just whatever you think looks good to you. You know, there's little imperfections here that you wouldn't have seen if you were actually watching the episode because the action just goes by so quickly. But because we've taken a still, we can see all the imperfections. In your image, you're not going to want to have any imperfections. So you're going to want to smooth it all out. You'll see there that I tried to make it a smooth node, but the end result looked worse than before, so I just kind of backed that out. That actually happens fairly often when you're vectoring. You just have to eyeball it and say, that doesn't look good, back it out, try again. You can try as often as you want. There's really no hurry. That looks pretty good, kind of. That looks okay. We'll just keep going. We can always fix it again later if it's not to our satisfaction. And we'll just work our way around. I usually like to zoom in to try and make sure that I've lined these up right before making it a smooth node. Smooth node usually clears up any small mistakes you might have had. That's the first part, so now we'll take this next line here and we'll kind of fool around with it. Sometimes it just gets not quite right, but you just play around with the line long enough, you get the feel for where the line bends based on which point you're bending at. You'll get there eventually. That's pretty good. You really want to put the points kind of in the middle of this line because when we're going to change the stroke width, it's going to make it really fat. And so we want to kind of make that match up with what's going on here in our mane. All right, so that's the preliminary outline. We got to get these other guys done too, though, while we're at it. These guys are going to be thinner. They will be the same color as the exterior. We'll notice here that didn't quite line up. I'm going to put my snapping back on again so I can see what's going on there. Again, I just hit the Shift % button to turn that on and off. That's pretty good. So again, these lines will be thinner than the outside lines, but that's okay because we can just set their stroke width to something different. This one actually works a little, oops. This one actually looks a little bit better if this line's a little bit farther down and then we have a little more extreme curve. That a little bit better, closer matches what's going on here in our main. And when you get good at this, you can just do it pretty quickly. Looks pretty good. You actually get a lot better at this just practicing it because you'll get a better feel for where the lines go when you pull them and twist them and all that business. All right, this guy over here, this is kind of a loop here, so we're going to delete these outside nodes, delete key. And in fact, this one can, oops, that one can't actually go yet. We're going to need to kind of bend this around, kind of the teardrop shape here to make it look almost right. We'll pull it around until these lines match up. You can see that there's basically almost no curve there, and then we make that smooth. And then when we fool around with it, that'll just kind of automatically adjust both sides of the curve for us. You'll note that if I actually try to delete this now, then it's going to go, whoa, way out there, super long line. So we can't do that. That's okay. This doesn't quite line up here. But we don't care right now. We'll go back and fix that later. A lot of this is start with your outline and then work on the details as you continue to work it in. So now what we'll do is we'll work on our width again. We'll try to figure out what the width is. 5 maybe? We'll go with 6 perhaps. And then we'll say 6 is the outside width here. So that's also 6. These guys here, they're going to be a different width. They're going to be, what, 2, 3, 3 perhaps. So we'll do, copy that out. Oops. Control C, Control Shift V to copy the style. Because all we want to do is copy the size of our lines. This guy here is not actually going to be 6. It's going to be, what, more like 4. So it's going to be actually slightly smaller. And you'll see there's a little bit of imperfection there. Really what we want to do is kind of line this up. Oh, got to turn my snapping off again. Line this up so it looks like the corner matches there. Because then, when you zoom out, it looks like, oop, we've got that loop there. And if we hide this, we'll see, oh, it almost looks kind of like the loop that Pinkie's got there in her main, which is slightly smaller than the outside outline. Now, I've made a mistake here on purpose to show you guys how to fix it. What I've done is I've put all of these elements on the wrong layer. So these are on the eyes layer, and I don't actually want them on the eyes layer. I want them all to be on the main layer. So how do we actually move objects around? Well, I'm going to select all the objects I created here. And then you can say move selection to layer above. And that will move it up a layer. But of course the layer above it is actually the eyelashes layer, so everything moved up to there. So we're going to have to keep moving it up until we get up to the main layer. I'm going to use a shortcut here, Shift Page Up, and we'll just keep moving it up. And then we see now we're on the main layer. So that's good because we want it to be on its own layer. So now we can hide our eyes and our eyelashes, and we still see what's going on in the main layer. Note that if you have a layer hidden, it won't let you draw on it. So that's one good way of preventing you from making mistakes, is just to hide a layer when you're not working on it, and then you won't accidentally draw on it. All right, so we need to fix some of our borders here. There's a situation going on here where this is kind of blocky, and we don't really like that. So what we'll do, oh, and here's another little imperfection here. This looks a little odd. Just kind of fiddling with the curves until it kind of meets my satisfaction, really. I think it looks a little better. You might disagree. Well, but it's up to you when you're vectoring. Pretty much whatever you like. So this one needs to have kind of a tapered end. So again, we're going to have to convert this to an object. Actually, it's stroke to path. And I mean, it's a little unfortunate we have to convert this entire object to a path just to fix this one corner, but that's the way it goes. It's not really a huge deal. Modern computers are good enough these days, so it won't matter too much. That is, oops. That one is unhappy as a smooth node. So we're not going to be able to get away with that. Sometimes things just act a little strange and you just have to work around them. Now, the reality is we can't really tell that node's there anyway, so it's probably not a huge deal. A lot of Inkscape is just working around the strangeness. So we've got kind of that thing going on in her hair. You can just hide this to take a look at what's going on. You'll note that there are a lot of small features here I'm just glossing over, like the fact that this tapers near the ends versus out here, which is a little bit thicker. And all of these curves on the external here have got kind of tapered ends, so they're thinner here. And I'm just kind of skipping all that. Why am I skipping all that? Because it's easier to skip all that. And in the end, when you finish your picture out, nobody's going to notice or care all that much. Now, it depends on how perfectionist you like to be. If you want to make everything just absolutely perfect, then by all means go ahead and fix them. But I'm not going to bother. All right, now we need to fix all of our colors with our wonderful color guide here. Start with the hair strokes again, BE1D77. This one's got to be the fill, BE1D77. You'll note that because we've made this into an object, or a path, I guess it calls it, stroke to path, we have to change the fill color, whereas with these, we have to change the stroke color. So I'm going to actually have to copy that out and then paste it in there manually to make that work. And we can't just do a straight Control-C to Control-Shift-V here, because otherwise you'll make this fatter than it used to be. But if you don't like coloring, copying the colors around, you could always just change this and then change this back to what it used to be, which I believe was a 3. Yep. And then we can copy this and do a Control-Shift-V on the remaining lines that have the same width. This last one here we can't do it on because it's got a different width than the others. All right, now that looks like it's colored properly. But the interior is not correct yet. We don't have a color for that. How do we do that? Well, that's not too difficult to do. What we'll do is we'll just create, again, another path that goes all the way around. And this is going to be our internal color for the main. We can afford to be super sloppy on this one because we don't really care. We don't really care all that much because it's going to be hiding behind all these outside external lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fill color, and I'm going to set it to what should be the internal color of her main. That should be ED458B. That looks pretty goofy. That's okay, we'll fix her up. First of all, we're going to want to make this the lowest object on this particular layer, on the main layer. So we're going to say object lower to bottom, which is the N key. You can always use the N key. And then we're just going to match up all these lines. Because it's the bottommost object on this layer, as soon as we move this line up behind the external line of our main, basically it's all going to vanish for us, and all we're going to get is the color we want. This would help if I remembered which lines I had drawn. So this is one of the things you're going to have to look out for as kind of a final proofing step, is to make sure that none of these black lines are visible. You can prevent some of the black lines from becoming visible by the simple expedient of turning off the external stroke paint here, and then you can't see it anymore. I don't like to do that though, because it's harder to see where you've made mistakes. Oops, you've noticed my stroke paint has actually changed colors to match the last color I'd used on a stroke paint. If this thing doesn't want to fit quite right, which this one doesn't, you can just double click to create a new node and then kind of drag it out until it does fit where you want it to go. It's a little goofy. I'm going to change this back to black so I can see Oop, nope, not that one. Heh. The stroke paint. There we go. So I can more easily see where my stroke is. That's not quite right. Now, one of the reasons I use a color guide is because sometimes in the episodes, the ponies can actually be in different lighting situations, and as such, their colors actually change. Like, for example, the Halloween episode where all the ponies are at night, all their colors are different. Now, if you actually wanted to make a vector of a nighttime scene, then that would be the way to do it, is kind of borrow the colors from that episode. But if you actually are doing a daytime scene, you want to go with a standard color guide. Oops, I've noticed that my internal path here has got a little bit of an error. I'm just going to smooth this out. Click off, and now the main more or less looks complete. So what's next?